make sure that you actually take notes today, because without taking notes, this concept is exceedingly challenging. So today we are going over proving triangles are congruent instead of doing what we did yesterday and having to have all 6 pairs of congruent parts being congruent. We are going to prove 3 pairs of parts are congruent, and this proves that 2 triangles are congruent. So you will need some colors, preferably. It makes this a little easier. Preferably 4, 2 for sides and 2 for angles. So the first one we have is side, 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 which proves that you have 2 triangles that are congruent. This means that you have something that looks like this. 3 sets of sides that have tick marks on them. And notice that I have 3 different amounts of numbers because they aren't all congruent. You just have 3 sets that are congruent. So again, 1 set, second set, third set. This proves that you have congruent triangles. Our next one, don't mark anything in this, is going over some vocabulary. So included means either between or made by. So what I mean by that is that angle A, this angle here, is being made by segment AB and segment CA. So it's being made by those 2 sides. That yellow is sandwiched between the 2 purples. For a side to be included, that would look like this. Segment AC, the purple side, is being made by, it's included between angle A and angle C. Those 2 angles are the endpoints. So our first set of examples, what angle is included between segment AB and segment BC. So the angle that's made by it, the one that's in between those 2 purples, touching the 2 purple, is angle B. All right, next example. What side is included between angle B and angle C? So angle B, angle C are these 2. Which side is between those 2 angles? So that would be segment BC. So our next one, we are looking at angle C. And we would want to know what 2 sides are included between, are including angle C. So the 2 sides, can they sandwich it? So segment BC and segment AC. Next up, what side is opposite angle A? So we have angle A and we want the side opposite. Opposite means across from. So going straight across. So that side is the side that is opposite angle A. So that's segment BC. Next up, we want the angle that is opposite segment AC. So again, opposite means across from. So we're going to the opposite side of the triangle and finding our angle, and that is angle B. Okay, that was angle B as in boy. And next up, we have our postulates and theorems that show that two triangles are congruent. The first one is side, angle, side. So we have two sides and the angle that's included. So we have one set of sides and we have a second set of sides and the angle that's being made by those two sides. So again, you'd have tick marks showing the sides. And an arc mark with an angle. And that proves that the two triangles are congruent. Next one we have is angle, side angle. So that means we have two angles and the included side. So one set of angles and a second set of angles and the side that is made by those two angles. So again, we'd have arc marks in the corners at the angles, showing that they're congruent. And we have tick marks sides, showing that they're Then we have angle, angle side. So again, we have two angles and one side, but this side is not included between the two angles. So it looks a little bit different. So you'd have one set of angles, a second set of angles, and the side that's not being made by those two angles. So again, you'd have arc marks in the angles. And tick marks on the sides. Again, this shows that you have congruent triangles. Our next one is hypotenuse leg. Which should really say hypotenuse leg plus a right angle, because the only way that you can have hypotenuse like is if you have a right angle. So you have one angle, it's a right angle, and you have two sides. The hypotenuse, which is your side across from the right angle, and another side. So again, your hypotenuse is the side across from your right angle. And again, you have that side and the hypotenuse. Again, when that happens, you have congruent triangles. Some words of warning. If you have a triangle that has all angles that are congruent, this is not congruent. So if all you have is angles marked as congruent, you put that it's not congruent. If you have a figure that's like this, an angle and two sides that are not making that angle. So again, this is one angle and the two sides that aren't making that angle. Notice what this writes: angle, side, side. Think about what that word is. You don't put it on your paper. You write not congruent. Also, if you get the reverse of that, so side, side, angle, that is also not congruent because that's this same kind of layout. Okay, so next step, we are going to use these and prove that triangles are congruent. So our first one, we have one set of angles. We have a second set of angles, and we have one side. So we have two angles and one side. So when that happens, that automatically gets rid of side, 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 angle, side, and hypotenuse leg because they have the wrong number of angles and sides. It does mean that it's congruent when we have two angles and one side. So we have to look at where the side is. If it's included between the two angles, it's made by the two angles, or if it's not made by the two angles. So this one, this side has endpoints of those two angles, so it's made by those two angles. So we have angle, side, angle. Number two, we have one set of sides marked as congruent and a second set of sides marked as congruent. We have nothing else marked for us though. But both of these triangles, so that top one and the bottom one, both share this middle line. When that happens, when that whole middle line is shared, you can mark it, and you need to mark that middle line as congruent to itself. So that means we have three sides that are congruent, that are marked as congruent now. And when we have three sides that are marked as congruent, that means we have side, side, side. Okay, our next one, we have one set of sides marked as congruent. We have a second set of sides marked as congruent. We have nothing else already marked for us, but we have vertical angles. And again, just like this line here, you had to mark, you mark vertical angles as being congruent to each other. So that means we have two sides and one angle marked as congruent. So that means that we can get rid of side, 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 angle, side, angle, and angle, angle, side, because they have the wrong number of things. We can also get rid of hypotenuse leg because there's no right angle. Now on this one, we do have to check and see where that angle is, because the angle has to be included between the two sides. So this yellow is surrounded by the purple and blue. So this is side, angle, side. Our next one, we have one angle marked for us. Ready? We have one set of sides, and we have a second set of sides. So we have two sides and one angle. So again, we're going between side, 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 angle, side, angle, side, angle, 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 side, and hypotenuse leg. So we can automatically get rid of side, 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 angle, side, angle, and angle, angle, side, because all of those don't have two sides and one angle. We don't have a right angle, so we can get rid of hypotenuse leg. So that means we have to check side, angle, side. So the angle has to be in the middle. Is this yellow included between blue and purple? No, it's not. So it's not side, angle, side. It is not congruent. So our next one, again, we have one set of angles, a second set of angles, or a second set of, one set of angles, one set of sides, and a second set of sides. So we have two sides and one angle. So again, because we have two sides and one angle, we can automatically get rid of these three. We don't have a right angle, so we can get rid of hypotenuse leg. Now we have to check where that angle is. So on this first figure, the angle is included. It's in the middle. This second one, it's not included. So they don't match. And one works, but the other one doesn't. So it's not side, angle, side. It is not congruent. Our next one, again, we have one set of angles marked for us. one set of sides marked for us. Remember that middle line is being fully shared. We need to mark it as congruent. So again, we have two sides marked as congruent and one angle. So again, we can get rid of these three. We don't have a right angle, so it can't be HL. Yeah, we need to look at our angle and see where it is. So the bottom one is included in between. Top one, it's not being made by this purple and blue, so it's not included. The bottom one would be side angle side. This top one is not congruent, so these are not congruent. Next one, we have one set of angles and a second set of angles and a third set of angles. So all we have is angles. We have three angles. Remember what I already said? Anytime you have just three angles, they are not congruent. Our next one, we have a set of right angles and another set of angles. And we have the side in the middle that's being shared. So we need to mark it as congruent to itself. So we have two angles and one side. So two angles and one side, it means I can get rid of anything that doesn't have two angles and one side. So notice, I got rid of hypotenuse leg, even though I have a right angle, because hypotenuse leg only has one angle. Now I'm left with two options. That means that is congruent with one of these. So we need to figure out where this blue side is. Is it being included or made by an orange and yellow angle or not? And in this case, it is. So we have angle, side, angle. Okay, our next one, we have one angle, it's a right angle. We have a side and a second set of sides. So we have one angle and two sides. So one angle and two sides, that automatically gets rid of these three. We have this yellow, it's not included between the blue and the purple. But we have a right angle and the side across from the right angle and another side. So we do have HL, we do have hypotenuse leg. On to the practice. So these little arrows, they mean parallel. They don't mean congruent, they mean parallel. So that does not tell me that sides are congruent. But what I do know is that this side in the middle is congruent to itself, so I can mark it. I can also mark my alternate interior angles because we have parallel lines being intersected by a transversal. So we have two sets of angles that we can mark because we have alternate interior angles. That's about two angles and one side. So that means that we can get rid of anything that doesn't have two angles, which is those three. Then we need to see where that blue side is. Is it being made by the yellow and orange or not? In this case, it is. So we have angle, side, angle, and triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DC. Okay, so I know that some of you are going, Miss Stream, no, that's not right, because y'all are wanting to do DBC. But look at my markings. For ABC, I went from A, which has nothing, to B, which has a yellow mark, to C, which has an orange mark. I need to follow that pattern. So D to C to B. Our next one, we have one set of sides marked as, or one set of angles marked as congruent, and one set of sides marked as congruent. Remember that we need to mark that middle segment. So that means we have two sides and one angle. And that side or that angle is included between the two sides, being made by those two sides. So that means we have side, angle, side. If you weren't sure about it, we could cross out anything that doesn't have two sides and one angle, which leaves us with SAS and HL. We know it's not HL because it's not a right angle. And we have to check where that angle is. The yellow is being made by the purple and the blue. And triangle ABC is congruent to triangle ADC. Next one, we have one set of angles. We have a second set of angles. And we have a set of sides. So we have two angles and one side. So that means that we have to have one of these two. The side is between the two angles. So that means we have angle, side, angle. I know that some of you are wanting to say that it's hypotenuse leg, but we don't have two sides. And that means that triangle ABC is congruent to triangle NPY. And our last one, we had a set of right angles. We have a set of sides that are already marked. And we have another side that we need to mark, one that they're sharing. So we have one angle and two sides. And so that means we either have side angle side or hypotenuse leg. We do have a right angle and the side across from this right angle. So we do have hypotenuse leg. So as you go through this, make sure that you use your color and are crossing out what you don't have. Okay,